Hello everybody, Ricky Rich here again, and for this short video, I wanted to see if I could tackle a post that was made on the forum about shove tactics, and I was thinking about it myself. Why couldn't we maybe just raise call, or why is it that I just prefer, and I've been taught by Jennifer, where it's just a lot of times it's simpler just to go ahead and get it in pre-flop and force your opponent to make that final tough decision as opposed to you having to wonder about, well, is he really shoving over me with a big hand, or is he trying to pull a fast one on me, or whatever. I thought I'd try to see if we could come up with a couple of math-based ideas as to why we may choose one over the other. Here I've picked out a hand I played recently, no particular reason other than it seemed to fit the idea somewhat. 100, 200 blinds. No antes though. Maybe I should have picked one with antes to better make the idea. But here we have a hand in the cutoff, King 10 suited. Good hand. Not a great hand. Certainly not a monster. But one that we definitely would want to play from this position, especially considering our chip stack. But how would we want to play it? Well, I elected to go ahead and shove. That's basically how I've been taught, getting to this chip stack size, 10, 12 big blinds, even a little higher once in a while with antes, just to go ahead and get it in pre-flop. Math is behind you, etc., etc. How is math behind us? Well, one of our favorite tools is the Nash calculator. Um, Basically what I've done, I've already got it up here, put in a structure of 1, meaning, we're not near a bubble. It's not a sit and go, so we don't have to worry so much about any real pure ICM ramifications, just, chip EV. We just want to know what's best to try to get the most chips out of our situation. We were in the cutoff. You see here, 24% of our hands is good enough to shove, which I'll show you what that range is here. Basically all pairs, all suited aces, and number of suited hands, of course, of which King 10 does fall within that range. We're good. We've made a good shove according to the math. Assuming that our opponents are going to be calling in approximately these ranges. See, the button can call 10%. That's assuming he knows what we're shoving. Same thing with the small blind, big blind, a little wider because he's already, part of the way there. But in reality, how often are those guys really going to be calling that wide? I mean, some of them, there are going to be guys out there, whether right or wrong, are going to be calling that wide. But that is, again, assuming they know how wide we are. Most guys probably don't have a clue as to how wide people are really going to be shoving. They're not going to. I know I don't. I always assume people are shoving tighter than this. I'm going under the idea that most people really don't have an idea how to properly shove short. A lot of guys are probably going to limp 10-8 before they're going to shove it. But with that said, let's try to come up with some idea of how the math would work in a situation like this and why this would be a profitable play long term. Let's just assume that between the three guys we get called 30% of the time, just roughly. That may be even a little high. Maybe you think it's a little low. Just for our purposes, though, that sounds good to us here. Let's come up with a stock range, kind of purposely with hands that beat us. All pairs, ace 10 or better, king jack or better. A couple guys may go with things that are a little worse once in a while. Maybe if they're I don't know, feeling lucky or whatever, but generally we're going to assume this range is 13% of all hands. We're 38% to win against that range over all these cases. Anyway, how does the math work? Maybe some of you have seen this, maybe some of you are going to see this for the first time, I don't know. But part of the math, hopefully I can make sense of this as I read it off. 70% of the time we're just going to pick up 300 chips. We're not going to get called. We're going to shove our chips in, everybody folds. Real easy. So 70% of the time, 300 chips, net gain over all chances, say 100 chances, 210 chips, 70 times. Okay, of the 30% that were called, we're going to still win 38% at a time. Just because we get called and guy's got a better hand doesn't mean we automatically lose. As you well know, when you get in good and they suck out on you. Same thing in reverse. It does happen once in a while. So 62% of the time, naturally, we're going to bust out. The math works this way here. You can see the two lines I've done here. So 11.4% of the time, we're actually going to win 2,450 chips with our shove. So 279.30 is how the math works out. You can see there. Same thing when we lose. 18.6% of the time, yeah, we're going to bust out. 1 out of every 5 times, 1 out of 6, whatever. We're going to bust out of this tournament. Oh well. So net loss of 437.10. Still, add all those up. You come up with net gain 52.2 chips per time we try this. So, as you can see, long term, it has have positive expectation. So, alright, that sounds easy enough. So, what happens if we do try to raise the 600 and maybe as Noble was putting the idea out there, well, we just call any shove if we're going to do that, just to, do something different. Well, we can try to take a look at that. I don't know how accurate this is really going to be, but assume we did raise the 600 here in this spot. The villain shoves for another 2,350 effective total, which is what our stack was. So to call 1,750. Let's assume the big blind did this. Pot's going to be 30-50, giving us 36.5% equity in a pot to call. That's what the odds would be. Well, now you got to figure out what's his range. Do you have odds to call? Do you have enough equity against what this guy's range might be? Well, if you do know this guy and you do have an idea of what he's capable of or what he's not capable of doing, well, maybe you have a better idea, but most times we don't have this knowledge. I mean, is he tight? If he's tight, well, according to this, the numbers say we got to fold. I mean, if he's only doing this with, bigger pairs and big aces, then we've got to get out of the hand, and we just pissed away 600 chips. Well, if he has an idea of what Nash is, or he's just by some chance close to that, well, then we'd have to call. We'd be giving up too much equity if we gave it up then. I mean, he could be coming, with some hands that at least we're live against or racing against. I mean, as you can see, we're still behind just about everything he's calling, but we do have enough equity to go with it. Most likely, the guy's going to be somewhere in between, but exactly where? Is it enough to call 36.5% equity? I mean, if he's, maybe he's calling with more pairs, or maybe this is a guy that likes to get cute. Maybe the guy in the small blind here. Who knows? Maybe because he feels he's got some chips, and maybe he feels he has some fold equity. Maybe he's seen you raise and fold before, or incorrectly assumes that you've left yourself room to fold, especially if you had gone to 500 instead. Maybe he feels he can go with something like Jack 10 suited and get you off your hand, and feels he may still have equity if you're called, or just likes the hand, whatever the case may be. A lot of different ideas come into play that you have to answer, and you may not have those answers. You may have no reads. So that may be a reason why you want to do that. Well, cases for raised calling. Ones that I can think of would be, well, say we don't have King 10, say we have Kings. Okay, well, I can understand if you want to go 500 or 600 or whatever your standard has been all this time, and go ahead and call a shove. And maybe in this case you won't mind so much being flatted, because you have a much easier hand to play post flop most of the time. Maybe you already know that the guys behind you play a certain way. Maybe you're in a league game, or you see the same guys in 180-man sit and goes or 90-man sit and goes, and you're used to what they're able and capable of doing. You know, it might be a reg that knows to go pretty wide when he starts getting short. Well, in that case, you may decide to call if he shoves, but maybe another guy that you know is tight, you may elect to fold to him. You don't necessarily have to do the same thing uh, each time you make that raise with that hand. It may depend on who's the opponent. Another factor maybe, well, we might not be in the cutoff. Maybe we have this hand over here and we have 2,300 chips, and suddenly, ranges or perception of ranges anyway changes. Now, if somebody were to go over the top of you, their range is going to be a little tighter, assuming your range is tighter. They may feel, oh, I got jack, so I'm going to have to go here, and you're going to have to assume the same thing, basically. Even more so if you decide to do something from early position. And even with a stronger hand, maybe you have, ace jack here and decide to raise from under the gun or early position, and the guy still goes ahead and jumps all over you. Are you really that comfortable with ace jack? When most guys are going to assume you're pretty big anyway and shove over you despite it. So there's a lot of different things that can go into making these decisions. But often, when you get into this particular stack size, especially where things start becoming messy with, well, do I have enough? Do I not have enough? It's just a lot easier to go ahead, get it in pre-flop, and put the decision on your opponent. Make them make the call. Well, make them try to figure out what your range is and whether or not they have the odds to call, 12 big blinds with their ace 9 or ace 10 even. Maybe they just figure, oh, he can't be doing that without a big hand. Whatever the case may be. So that's the thought process that I would think would go into a hand getting this short, and other factors like maybe we are on the bubble. Say we were on the bubble in a game. Well, then people are going to be scared to bust out on the bubble, and they'll be tighter, which makes going ahead and taking advantage of your full fold equity even a better idea, especially with a hand that you don't necessarily want to get called with. Now, some of the bigger games where, a lot of these high buy-in regs who play with each other all the time, they may have to go through even more levels of thinking. Well, this guy's capable of doing this, so I've got to play this way, but he already knows that I may decide to raise and call or raise and fold to another guy and not him or whatever. They got all kinds of things to worry about. I'm just talking about little simple, 3, 5, 10, 20, $30 buy-ins sometimes where you're playing against guys that basically look at their cards and try to figure out whether or not they're ahead or not. Then again, you'll find different regs that you may see all the time. You understand this guy has an idea, and you have to be, a little bit more cautious with some of these guys, or at least pay attention and take some notes. That's basically how I wanted to say it. I just didn't know about how to type it up in a post, so I thought I'd put it in a video instead. I hope it made sense. Maybe somebody else will come up with another angle, or maybe some flaws in my thinking, because, I'm still trying to figure out some of these things myself at times. But let me know what you think, and we'll continue on with this if anybody chooses to. Thanks.